Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to do the A to Z Bookish Survey. This survey was created by Jamie of the Perpetual Page Turner, and I will leave her blog post linked down below, and I was tagged to do this. Actually tagged to do something, I know, novel concept, but I was tagged by Kristen over at Super Space Chick, and I will leave her video linked down below as well. This is going to be a pretty straightforward survey. There are 26 questions, one for every letter of the alphabet, and they are all book related, so let's just jump right in. A is for author you have read the most books from. The easiest answer for this is definitely Lemony Snicket or Daniel Handler. I've read a grand total of 17 books by this man. That's a whole lot. I've read the 13 series of Unfortunate Events, I've read the Beatrice Letters, The Lump of Coal, which is a children's book, The Unauthorized Autobiography, and Why We Broke Up. I think that's all 17. I might be missing one. There are a lot of books. In second place, we would definitely have Owen Colfer, because I read all the Artemis Fowl books as well as a few of his other books. So grand total, I've read 11 books by Owen Colfer. And after that, we would have 10 books each for Scott Westerfeld and Shannon Hale. B is for best sequel ever. So I've taken this to not just mean book 2, but any sequel in a series that is just the best ever. So I have 3 sequels that I think are better than the first book and that are just absolutely incredible. The first of those is Invasion of the Tierling by Erica Johansson, which is the second book in the series. It's so much better than the first one, it's amazing. Also, Monsters of Men by Patrick Ness, which is the third and final book in the Chaos Walking trilogy, and the best one of the trilogy. And finally, Blue Lily, Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the third book in the Raven Cycle, and it is my favorite of the entire series. It's incredible. C is for currently reading. The book I'm currently reading is Autobiography. This is by Christina Lauren. I'm about 100 pages in. This is an arc, and it doesn't come out until next month, but I am enjoying it so much. D is for drink of choice while reading, and this easily has to go to coffee. The temperature of the coffee depends on the season. I go back and forth. In the summer, obviously, I'm drinking all iced coffee, but once it gets cold enough, I love drinking hot coffee, and that is probably the drink I'm drinking most often when I'm reading. E is for e-reader or physical book. I definitely have to go physical book here. I just prefer the feel of having a book in my hands, but I do love my e-reader. It gives me the opportunity to read a lot of books I never might have been able to read otherwise, so I prefer physical books, and after I read a book on my e-reader, I might want it in physical form. But I got nothing against e-readers. F is for fictional character you probably would have dated in high school. So I dug deep for this. Characters I would have dated in high school before, Cece realized she was gay, would have included nerdy men. Awkward is probably a good keyword. So the kind of guys I would have and did date in high school would have been someone like maybe Jamie from Queens of Geek. I was also kind of into Simon from the Mortal Instruments. I can't even... Yeah, G is for glad you gave this book a chance. For this, I absolutely have to go with Noteworthy by Riley Redgate, which I just read a couple of months ago. I had almost no interest in reading it, and then I just kept hearing these great reviews, and I couldn't understand why a book that didn't sound that interesting to me was so good, and then I read it, and it immediately became one of my favorite contemporaries of all time. H is for a hidden gem book. So these are all going to be queer releases that I don't think get nearly enough attention. So there's Radical by E.M. Koki, Knit One Girl 2 by Shira Glassman, Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly, and Coffee Boy by Austin Chant. Not nearly enough people read any of these books, and you should all be reading them right now. I is for important moment in your reading life. This definitely has to go to the time when my mom talked me into reading the series of Unfortunate Events. I'd grown up being a reader and reading a lot of Nancy Drew books, but that was the first major series that I got involved in, and I really didn't want to read it, and my mom had to constantly talk me into it, and it wound up being my first obsession series. J stands for just finished. I think that's behind me. Yes, it is. I just finished reading The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, which was absolutely incredible and such a good conclusion to the series. I can't stop talking about this. Janelle and I had a 5-hour Skype call last night talking about the Raven Cycle. I love it so much. K stands for kind of books you won't read. So I don't have a type of book that I absolutely will not read. I just refuse out of hand, but there are some genres that I don't have a tendency to reach for and just don't grab my attention as often. So I don't really reach for manga that often. I'm not that interested in historical fiction books, and I almost never reach for nonfiction that isn't a memoir. Really, nonfiction, I lean exclusively memoirs and occasionally something non-memoir, but very rarely. L stands for longest book you've ever read. That's up here. Hold on. The longest book I've ever read easily goes to The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. This is a 1,400-page book, and when I read it originally, it took me 7 months. But I finished it, so this is the longest book I've ever read. M stands for Major Book Hangover because of... I don't get book hangovers very often, but the only one I can think of right now is last summer I read The Summer That Melted Everything by Tiffany McDaniel, and for a while, no other book just seemed to be quite as good. It just wasn't hitting the level that this book did. N stands for Number of Bookcases You Own. So I technically own 4 bookcases. 3 of those are behind me, my 3 big Billy bookshelves from IKEA, but I do have one smaller bookshelf, and it's currently in storage. It's like a half-size bookshelf from Target that I was using at school. Yeah, 4 bookshelves. O is for one book you've read multiple times. There are a whole bunch of books I've read multiple times. I love rereading, but I think the book that I've reread the most times has to go to The Giver by Lois Lowry. I've probably read this book almost 20 times. I always get something new out of it, and honestly, at any given time, I probably want to reread this book. P stands for Preferred Place to Read. My bed. Absolutely. No matter where that bed is, no matter what the bed is, I prefer to read in bed, full stop. Q stands for quote that inspires you from a book you've read. I wanted to mention a couple. First of all, the quote, "I'd rather die on an adventure than live standing still," and that is from A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I just adore that quote. And then basically every quote that Shauna McGuire has written in her 2 Wayward Children books, I just think every word she writes is gorgeous, but there's one quote that's always stuck out to me from Every Heart a Doorway. That quote is, "We notice the silence of men, we depend upon the silence of women." I remember reading that and needing to take a break and just think about life in general. R stands for a reading regret. For this, I definitely have to go with not keeping up to date on Rick Riordan's books. I love his books. I think that they are fun and interesting, but after I read the Percy Jackson series, I never picked them up again, and now I feel like I'm so behind it's impossible to get caught up ever, and that's very discouraging. So it just keeps being this huge thing that I'll never conquer because I didn't just keep up with them in high school. S stands for series you started and need to finish, where all of the books in the series are already out. Since we were just talking about Rick Riordan, I guess I should mention the Heroes of Olympus series by him. I read the first book and I haven't read the other 4. Probably should finish this. There's also The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. There are a bunch of series that I need to finish. Actually, I'll be posting a video on Friday all about the series that I want to finish, so if you want to hear about more, tune into that on Friday. T stands for 3 of your all-time favorite books. So for my sanity, we're not going to include Harry Potter in this because I think you guys know it's literally tattooed on me. So 3 books that I consider favorites. Like I already mentioned, The Giver by Lois Lowry. I mean, I've read it 20 times. I think I love this book a whole lot. There's also Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, which I adore and inspired my thesis, as well as The Color Purple by Alice Walker, which got a full chapter of my thesis. These are all books that I just love to death. U stands for Unapologetic Fangirl for The Raven Cycle. I just barely finished them and I can't stop thinking about them and going through Tumblr and asking people about them and talking about them to Janelle and going through my notes. I love them very, very much. V stands for very excited for this release more than all the others. I'm gonna list 3 again. So first of all, there's Not Your Villain by C.B. Lee, which comes out in October. Actually, I think all 3 of these come out in October. I cannot wait for this book. There's also That Inevitable Victorian Thing by E.K. Johnston, which sounds amazing. And 27 Hours by Tristina Wright. I can't believe how close we are to actually having this book. W stands for Worst Bookish Habit. This probably isn't going to sound that bad, but I think my worst bookish habit is building up collections of books that I only sort of want to read, like accepting them or buying them even when I'm not that invested, and then they just sit for months and months and months while I keep reading new, shinier books. If I don't want to read them that much, why do I keep having them? Why do I keep buying them? I don't know. Or it could be that I chronically put off reading adult releases, and it's stupid because these are books that I really, really want to read and that I'm interested in reading, but I know they'll take me a lot longer, and so that makes me put off reading them. It's a very shallow reason for putting off reading a book, but I do it a lot. X starts for X marks the spot. Start at the top left of your bookshelves and pick out the 27th book. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. It looks like the 27th book on my shelf is Cloaked by Alex Flynn, which is part of a companion series of fairy tale retellings. It's probably my least favorite of the series, but that's what the 27th book was. Y stands for your latest book purchase. I have bought almost no books this summer. I've received almost all of them, so I will tell you the last book I bought, but it was over a month ago. That was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which I bought because I went and met the author. But last book I received was A Line in the Dark by Melinda Lowe, which is a book that's coming out in October, and this was an ARC that just came in the mail for me from Penguin. Z stands for Z Snatcher, a book that kept you up way too late. I think the last book that I stayed up way too late reading was probably Noteworthy by Riley Redgate. Usually when I'm invested in a book, I'll stay up until 2 and then I'll force myself to go to sleep, but that was just not a thing I could do when I was reading Noteworthy. I pushed myself past 2 a.m. so I could finish it. Although I'll be honest, I also stayed up pretty late when I was trying to finish The Raven Cycle. I kept really wanting to read those. Okay guys, there you go. That was the A to Z Bookish Survey. I hope you enjoyed hearing the answers to some of these questions. Out of curiosity, what books are you excited for in the last few months of the year? What's coming up that you're just dying to get your hands on? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!